ago, I recently completed my Super Nintendo collection, so I have every US game. I also recently completed my Microvision collection. Have about 30 systems, about 1,700 games, and just an avid collector and enthusiast. Why don't you tell the audience about some of the sets that you do have?
Oh, geez. Complete CIB N64 set US, CIB Sega CD, CIB, when I say CIB, complete with instruction box cart, Sega Genesis, Sega CD, 32X, N64. I'm 110 boxes away from Nintendo US. Microvision, Jaguar CD, the list goes on and on. Bunch of obscure stuff. N-Gage, Neo Geo Pocket Color, one away from a Virtual Boy. Sega Dreamcast, complete US set. Blah, 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 blah. Anyways, not here really to, like I said, I'm really here to talk about, with Chris and eventually Pat, enjoying your collection. And I'm really big on I'm very passionate about video games. I'm thankful to be kind of a spokesperson for just collecting and just video games in general. Many know, but I was one of the original organizers of this show, helped bring it to Portland, and stepped down last year to focus on a charity event in my own hometown for abused children. And it's Cowlitz Games for Kids, and like I said, I'm just passionate about games and helping people. And part of me stepping down was a time factor, because I think we all hit a point where whether it's money, time, or priorities in our life, and we have to make choices. And so I'm really big on balance, and I'm really big on priorities. And like I said, I'm a social worker by day. And so I made a choice about a year ago to kind of take a step back and start appreciating kind of what I've collected over time. And one of the things I wanted to organize was a local gaming club open to the public. So I would take stuff out of my collection and bring it to, it used to be a Minus World arcade, but they went out of business. So I now have it at an arcade, a local retro video game store, pop culture, called Classics and Odysseys in Kelso. And every month, we have a little Facebook page, and we set up and enjoy games. And I think it's important that whatever you collect or are into, that you sometimes you can get burnt out on it, whether it takes up too much space or too much money. And it's a great kind of refresh of kind of getting back into the spirit of collecting and gaming and stuff. So Chris has got to know him pretty well over the last couple of years. I've known him for a while. And anything you want to add to that, just in general?
I would say that there's a few pitfalls that I'd like to recommend that you avoid when you're collecting. One thing I would say is that it's okay to buy to resell, and maybe keep a trade box that you have for other people, and you can trade items with other people. But I would really avoid at all costs purchasing games as a serious investment. Last year I heard Pat the NAS Punk say, if you're going to make something as an investment, invest in stocks, invest in a business. This should be a hobby. It should be something that you should enjoy. I really wouldn't buy an item just because you say, I think this is really rare, it's really worth a lot of money, and it's going to increase in value. Well, you should think about things like opportunity cost. $100 that you spend here could buy you something today that would actually bring you enjoyment. And if you can flip that for $50 in 5 years, it's not really worth it. That's not really why you should be invested in the hobby. Buy stuff that you enjoy. Buy stuff that you see yourself playing, or that goes towards a collection that's actually meaningful to you. I wouldn't buy something just because you think that it's really rare or worth a lot, just because ultimately you're going to have a lot of stuff that you don't really care about. If you have shelves and shelves of games and they're all meaningless to you and you don't play them, or they don't fit a collection goal that you have in mind, you're really missing the point. I would try to focus on stuff that brings back a certain nostalgic feeling to you, or something that really makes you excited to play the games that you do have. So I would just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm here to field any questions you have about collecting video games, or like I said, and we're here to like I said, I value and appreciate collections of all kinds. You know, I have friends that just collect a little bit. I have friends that just collect, you know, just the dollar games, and I just really appreciate games in general. Like, for example, you know, I'm in the back there seeing Ness ice hockey play at our gaming club, and he can attest to this. It's my favorite Ness game, and we play it. It's kind of an ongoing tournament that I have with another club person, and he beats me every time, by the way. And but you know, it's just getting back to the roots and enjoying something. And so, the question I get asked a lot is, "Yeah, you got all the games, but you don't play them, right?" And honestly, that question kind of bugs me, because the truth is, you know, I'm so much more than just a collector. You know, I teach intro to game development at Portland Rock Creek Center. I got that job because of this show, you know, and I drive from Longview, Washington down to Portland to teach it, mostly for fun. I mean, I get paid a small, you know, but like I said, I do it because I care. I'm passionate about video games. You know, local gaming club, you know, I'm always sharing the word about video games, helping fellow collectors. And like I said, you know, it's, people say stuff like that. It's like they don't really know who I am, and it's like they just see the collection and be like, "Oh, he's rich." You know, you don't play any of that stuff, and it's just kind of an unfair jab at me. And anyways, welcome back.
Thanks, John. If you don't know me, my name is Pat Contri, and I did this panel last year with John.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. It was like collecting games in life. It was like kind of philosophical a little bit. It was interesting.
Yeah.
And we kind of went over, I guess, how like not really the games themselves, but I guess how the outer influence of games, how it affects your life, I guess. And
Chris touched base on the Chris Pfanner touched base on kind of avoiding it as an investment. And,
and this is where we try to avoid controversial subjects, I guess. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, there are people out there that do speculate on game prices. A lot of people do it, which is fine. You know, people collect comic books or baseball cards, but when you get into like gray areas, when you get into stuff like people that, you know, have multiple sets of rare games, and I'll bring up a quick story real quick. At an expo that happened fairly recently, Retro Gaming Expo. Not this one, it was a retro-themed expo, and a seller said to me straight to my face that he had 25 copies of Flintstones Dinosaur Peak, which is the second rarest game on the NES, and goes for hundreds of dollars. And I'm thinking to myself, here's a game that a couple of years ago was worth maybe $125, and now you look on eBay, it goes for like $400 to $500. And why is that? It's because some people, you know, want to capitalize on, you know, the growth of popularity of retro gaming, and so people do try to corner the market on things like that, unfortunately. I mean, obviously, well, if it was in the real world, in real financials, it would be criminal. But for retro gaming, it's fine. So because no one cares if it's just, you know, retro games. So like I said last year, is that, you know, don't collect games because you think you're going to pay for your retirement or buy you a house. That's not why you get into game collecting. That's not why you should be in it at all.
Yeah. Any questions from the crowd? Anything you want to cover about collecting?
Along the same lines, what's something that you thought that's lost with most value?
I can add to that. Good example. So I've moved majorly twice, and moving to me is a scary discussion. I don't like moving. I typically am pretty grounded. I've been in the same house, you know, for a while now, you know. Last 6 years. But when I moved into our first home, we moved from first I moved from California, Redding, California, to Vancouver, Washington, to an apartment. Unbeknownst to me, it was a smaller apartment, and I had to move everything in boxes, and I had a pristine Sega CD box. And I was real, and then of course the same day I was like, you know what? I'm doing good with this move. Nothing's getting damaged. So I spent pretty good money on the Sega CD box, and it fell out of the box, and I watched it in slow motion go down the stairs. And it rattles now. But, you know, a corner just totally trashed, you know. But, you know, I eventually got the system fixed. But, yeah, I mean, went from worth something to I'm going to turn it and put it there on the shelf so it doesn't show the completely jacked, crushed corners from that moving experience. But I kept it for the story. A lot of my pieces in my collection have stories. I'm not getting rid of it because, well, there's a story attached behind it.
I think that you should really think about moving. I've read that the average American moves probably 7-8 times or more in their life, sometimes over 10 times. You know, I'm 26 years old. I just moved last month. I have 4 arcade machines, you know, pushing 2,000 games. It was rough. You know, when you're especially a younger person, you're usually looking at a room. Well, that's kind of a problem when you have a game room that is really a second room in your life. You need to think about the fact that you're going to move this. So a lot of people say, oh, I have these games and they're nice filler on the shelf. They make the bookshelves look bigger. I would really try to avoid that, because if these games don't really fit a collection and you're just kind of using them as filler, you need to ask yourself, am I going to carry this around with me for the rest of my life? These are questions that I've asked myself. There are some things that I have, and I really have to, you know, question, you know, like in 50 years, will I have an Emerson, you know, Arcadia? Am I going to like this? Am I going to enjoy this? 50 years from now, every time I move, am I going to move this box with these things? You know, I have my games and I enjoy them, but it can get a little out of control when you think, oh, well, what system do I still need? How could I really expand my set? Oh, my 3DO collection is kind of small. I should get this bigger. Well, if that's not something that I play and enjoy, and that's not meeting kind of a collection goal, you really have to think about how big that's going to be. You know, I respect collectors that have smaller sets that really enjoy them and play them more. I certainly understand, obviously, completing a set for a full system. This obviously makes sense. You need to think about, you know, am I enjoying everything, and do I have space for it? Is it weighing me down? What happens if I have to move? Am I going to have this item still with me in 20 years? So when you're out there buying something because you think it's cool or valuable or rare, you know, think about that. Do I want to move this, and will I have it with me, you know, for the future?
You're depressing me, because half my stuff I'll just get rid of when I move, probably. I'm like, I don't need to have all these Genesis games I'll never play. I don't need my Emerson Arcadia. I'm not going to play that ever. I don't think. I'll probably hook it up once, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, good, it works. I'll put it back. I am guilty of some of that. Yeah, yes, sir. Yep.
What do you do with some of the extras you have? I mean, over time, you get some extras. What's the right way to get those in the hands of people that I believe will play them?
That's how I handle extras. So I don't like extras because, honestly, I don't have space. So nice thing about the local gaming club I do is I bring a box of trade swag, and he's done it, I've done it. We just bring a box and have it that way. I think it's perfectly fine just saving up your trade stock and maybe be a vendor here at the show, or go on a forum and, hey, these are my extras. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. There's gaming forums, there's shows, there's everything from Craigslist. You can save up amount and go to a local game store and see what kind of trade deal you can do. There's a lot of
God forbid eBay, if you want to sell them on eBay.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that, as long as you don't put a $100 buy it now in a game that's a $40 game. That's fine.
Good point. And to add to that, there's an auction right now for $50,000 for a 10-gen AC adapter. Yeah, that's the wrong way of doing it.
When people go on eBay or whatnot, is the vendor selling a set?
Well, it depends. You want to just get rid of your stuff quick, you put it in a lot. And depending on, you're going to have 1 or 2 people buy it. Someone who wants to get into a collection quick, that wants like 250 NES games, or a reseller that wants to, say, oh, I can buy 250 games for $400 and par it out and make like $400 on it over the course of like 6-7 months or something. So it depends what you want to do. But if you want to maximize it, you're going to sell each game individually. I used to sell extras on eBay, and I would just put them 99¢. Start them off, and then you put $1 each additional game for shipping, and you'll get the same people that really want the games for their collection will bid on 25, 30 of your games, and you'll get rid of them. And you for that when you get rid of like 5 random games, that it's going to go to someone who's going to play them, for the most part.
That is the way to do it. Yeah.
But it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time doing that.
A lot of time, and real quick to add on eBay, they're tracking now. If you do over 200 transactions in PayPal, you have to claim that.
Yeah.
So you really have to be smart. If you're just selling stuff here and there, eBay's fine. But if you're doing serious selling on eBay, you better be claiming it.
Yeah,
because if they find you, you're gonna get thumped.
Yeah.
Also, if you're not a member of Digital Press or Nintendo Age or Atari Age, I highly recommend it. It was absolutely pivotal for me in my collecting process because through those forums, if you become established, you can sell off your extras and also get a lot of items. eBay with PayPal fees takes 13% or more if it's a big ticket item. There's also a lot of time invested in obviously going to the post office. It's cumbersome. So if you can go onto Digital Press, not only can you get things for sometimes a better price because people will give you that maybe 13% off because they're not having to pay it all to PayPal, but you can also get rid of a lot of stuff in a lot. So when you buy something, you say, oh, I have some stuff that you might be interested in. Going to those forums is huge. If you're not a member, I would definitely recommend it because I know that all of us have gotten awesome things off those forums, and it's really important.
Digital Press, I've gotten, I remember, I don't know the guy's name, but there's one guy I did business with over a couple of years. I probably did 5 transactions. He always gave me great deals. Like, it was like, oh, Final Fight guy for like $40, stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that's
Nice.
fantastic.
Nice.
Not complete, but.
That's all right.
And you'll
That's
meet
a good
people
player.
on those forums that you may make friends with in real life. There's people that I met on Digital Press that I've met in person here at the show. And these are the type of people, when you do get a box for them, you open it up and you find extras because they're just so happy to meet someone else who's interested in games. And this is just a lot funner of a process than selling stuff on eBay. So if you have a lot of extra stuff, I'd really recommend that route.
Now, however, this world isn't perfect, though, so I'm going to be the cynic and just say, whenever you're on any forum, Digital Press, Nintendo Age, there are people out there, small minority, though, that are not reputable, and there are bad stories that come out, so always be careful, do your research of who you're dealing with. A lot of threads have, like, a reputation thread where it said, about this person.
Absolutely.
Digital Press has that, I believe, for each
Yep.
person. You can look up.
Nintendo
So-
Age has I think, one of the better ways of doing it, where it's like the feedback and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good, and I encourage, if you get on a forum and you're a new person, it sometimes can be unfriendly. You kind of have to establish yourself before people can take you seriously, and so it sometimes is unfriendly for new people. But if you stick around, it can be awesome. Definitely.
And there are clicks on forums, unfortunately. I'm going on record here. I'm not ruffling feathers, but there are people on Nintendo Age that don't like me for various reasons, and so I'll never be like in that inner circle, which is fine. But overall, the people are very cool overall.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions? I saw a couple other hands.
How do you feel about price tags depending on game versus a main condition game?
Great question. All right. So I had this talk, I think, yesterday, and the other panel. I believe in time stamping stuff. So, for example, Atari 2600 game during the crash, North American video game crash of 83, 84. And a lot of games will have price stickers from like Kmart, JCPenney, Sears for $1.99, or we'll have like KB Toys like $39.99 / to $20 / to $10 / to the stickers falling off to the side. I keep all the stickers on there because that tells me, wow, the market was really in bad shape, because I'm kind of a video game historian as well, and so I'll keep that. Rental stickers, if it's from Jimbo's 5 and Dime VHS and more grocery store. I'll keep that, foil. That might be the last thing from that business, and so I'll keep it typically on, I would say, a high percentage of my cards. There's a couple I've taken them off, only because it was hard. It was when I was actually playing the game, the sticker got in the way, like on a CD game, or like on a TurboGrafx game, if it was covering the artwork of the game.
Oh, wow.
I would take that off, which alcohol does work on that, which I was shocked.
I leave on most of the stickers because, again, it's a part of history. I mean, where I grew up, in the late 80s, you had just the VHS stores explode around, 87, 80, 89. You'd have like, and back then you had to pay for a membership
Yeah.
to rent videos. It was like $90 you had to pay a fee just for the pleasure and the privilege of renting these movies
We'll
back
take
then.
your driver's license and $50
Yes.
cash down deposit.
Yeah, so then you get like, I remember the first memory I had was like Magic Star Video popped up. We had Easy Video, which was a chain on the East Coast. We had like mini chains, and then we had the mom and pops, and you had like rent one get two free for the weekend. So I remember one of the first games I rented at Magic Star Video was Mickey Mouse Capade and Wizards and Warriors. like Mickey Mouse paid a lot more. But the point is this: is that was a historical time for that. I don't think will ever repeat, unfortunately, where the only way you can get at these games is by going and renting them because you couldn't afford to buy every game. You read about Nintendo Power. You had to go to the store, and your weekend, good or bad, you picked a game. And so, yeah, I usually keep those on. I don't find a lot anymore that have stickers on there, but I think there's a thread in Nintendo Age where they actually are trying to document all the old mom and pops. Like was where they were, which I think is very interesting because for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, that was what it was before Blockbuster came in and destroyed them all. And so I take the Blockbuster stickers off for everything.
Yeah, like I said, I would just want to add on that. If I take the sticker off, it just becomes just another, one of, thousands of other carts that anybody could have. But having that sticker on there makes it kind of unique. So that's my.
Yeah, if it bothers you, take it off. If you'd like to keep it, I would say go for it. One thing that I've been doing lately is I'll take the price sticker, say, on the front of a Genesis box and actually put it on the inside, or maybe leave the receipt on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you have a couple thousand games, it's kind of nice to go back in history and be like, oh, this is exactly where I got that at this time. Old receipts are hilarious to see that someone, the 3DO I had, someone paid $500 for it, at one point in time. It's kind of funny, or to see those high-profile items like the $2 Snatcher that John got. He recently sold me Harvest Moon, which is the last Super Nintendo game I needed, and there's a $2 price tag on the back, which I will not be removing.
I did get it for $2.
That's kind of funny. One thing I will say about rental stickers is that I'm from Alaska, and initially someone found me on Digital Press that was just looking for other Alaskan collectors. Well, I had actually 3 or 4 games that were from the Cars, which is a grocery store in Kodiak, Alaska, which is an island that's kind of hard to get to. It's full of fishermen and grizzly bears. Well, I found someone there who was from Kodiak, and I met him in person, and he had rented the very games that I owned in my collection.
Oh, wow.
So he had taken them home and played them, and we were holding the same game that he had rented. It's a small world, but some of that stuff, it ends up coming back to you, and it just kind of makes for a, humorous story.
Yeah.
So along the lines of stickers, say you buy a game at the show here and the stickers are right on top of the label, or maybe there's residue, is there any way to take those off without damaging what's the recommended way?
All right.
Blow dryer.
Blow dryer is, blow dryer. Blow dryer is good. Definitely not too close. You can delaminate it depending on what type of blow dryer or other device to heat up for a sticker. Yes. Plastic versus paper makes much difference, but blow dryer is a safe way for pretty much all of them.
I found like Guga's all right for Nintendo and SNES, but not for N64, like the plastic.
Yeah.
If it's a paper sticker or a paper type sticker, what you can do is sort of dissolve it in like a window cleaner, and then to wait for it to kind of get through the stickiness, then you kind of like peel it away, and it'll be really loose. And
Just the plastic, the denatured alcohol, the 91%. If it's just plastic, but you have to be careful because it can discolor it. So you have to be careful with that. But that's another way of getting rid of, like, if you have the void sticker from a rental sticker that leaves the residue, the 91% alcohol with and then small brushes, it can come off pretty nicely.
with your fingertip, just rub it.
Yeah,
It comes off eventually.
Yeah, but a little nice 100% cotton cloth works pretty good too. But you have to be careful with that. So, yes, sir.
Uh-oh. Boy, John, we didn't discuss this at all.
All right.
This is getting recorded too. So.
All right. Well, okay.
I'll be honest. If you
All
want,
right.
John.
I'll start it. So I'm not a sealed collector. I'm not a VGAer. I'm just gonna talk more philosophy to answer it. What do I think of it? I don't believe in slabbing a game because I feel like it's sending a game to its coffin.
That's a good way of
And
putting
then,
it.
like I said, it's you put it in there, and once it's in there, what now? I got out of collecting toys for that reason because they're packaged. I couldn't play with them, and I do videos on the side of how to collect video games, and if I slabbed all my games, I couldn't show people the insides of my games. I couldn't show what the gameplay looks like. When I go to a YouTuber, and they want to, do some fun game or I hate you episode. If I slabbed all my game collection, it's like, what do you do with that? That's not, it's just not for me. I'll leave it nice like that. I'm not a VGAer, and if people do it, so be it. That's fine. I just don't do it.
I don't have a reputation to hurt, so I would say that there's a book out there called The Toy Collector, and it's about a man who gets out of control collecting toys, specifically robots. And it kind of talks about how, as a collector, people sort of value their attachment to a piece of history based on their ownership of it. And that doesn't really make a lot of sense. That doesn't really jive with me. And basically, it comes down to the point of there might be a young boy that has a very rare robot toy that's, getting scuff marks and he's kicking it around. But that kid loves that toy maybe far more than the collector who, covets it so direly. And that someone who has something mint in the package up on the shelf, they're actually some of the most distance, they have the most distance between them and the actual object that they're interested in, versus maybe someone who actually enjoys the things that they buy. I don't mind if someone keeps something complete in the box, but when you seal it up and you put it in a bulletproof case and you know that you'll never open it and you'll never touch it, you're really entering a zone where you are kind of putting something to an area that you will never really have a connection to it. If it's your favorite game of all time and you want it sealed, that's great. But when it enters this sort of collector territory where no oxygen will ever touch it again, you're really actually saying that there is going to be a huge distance between you and the item that you're looking at. So with VGA, it just really seems that you are taking the games kind of to their coffin, and you're also putting things in a stratosphere that just doesn't really make sense. Look at baseball cards, look at comics. Those markets are really in the toilet right now, and to have these ultra rare things just sealed away, it just doesn't really make sense to me. I also don't really believe in the process that's going on, that they're really grading it in a way that I believe is right. But I would just suggest that, don't go there. Be somewhere that you can actually enjoy the things, even if they are mint, sealed, complete in box, as opposed to just entering this sort of new stratosphere of collecting that you can be sure you'll never really enjoy the things that you have.
Oh boy. How can I do
You
this
had to
that
ask
way?
the question.
I do have a reputation somewhat to destroy. Even I've gone back and forth on Nintendo Age with a couple of sealed collectors in the past, and the thing about sealed collecting is even they agreed at a point that once you're collecting sealed games, you're no longer really a video game collector. You're something else. Maybe that's what you're saying, how you're distanced from it. At that point, you're no longer valuing what that game actually is and what the content of that game is. That's all gone at that point. Now you're just valuing, this is an object that's never been opened and has a cellophane seal on it, and that's why, to me, it's valuable versus the one I can have right next to it that's the same exact thing. You know what I mean? You're getting this really weird area there. And you can do what you want. I have a problem with the grading process as well. I have a huge problem with the fact that they graded a Nintendo World Championship grade card. I don't think they have the authority to do that. I think it was flawed. It doesn't make any sense. And now I'm thinking about, well, if I ever have to sell mine, do I have to get mine graded to compare it? Like, does that make any sense? But here's a better way for me to put it. David Crane is here today. And if you went up to him, two people went up to him. One person goes up to him, and has a sealed, Pitfall game, let's just say, and said, oh, I had this sealed Pitfall game, it's graded 90. And a second person comes up to them and says, I love Pitfall, I play it every day, this means a lot to me. Who do you think David Crane would respect more? Who would he appreciate more? Who would he think who actually values his work and what he did more? Which person? And that's, to me, the best way to answer that question.
Answer it? All right. Yes.
I'm just curious about AV modding your consoles.
Oh, yeah.
Do it, and is there a best way to go about doing it? And
Great question. I like this question better. It's all right. All right. So, it's kind of AV is kind of getting into modifying, and modifying. It doesn't matter what you modify. It's not done typically by a company. So you have to find a dude that knows electronics really well, or a friend, or multiple friends, that can do it. It's getting easier as time goes on. Before it was like, oh my gosh, the Longhorn engineer guy, he's on the forum again. Quick, he's only doing like a couple mods, and I'll get like a PM in my inbox and have to like quickly jump on it. Now it's like, it's kind of a side business, and I welcome that. I mean, I totally welcome that. It's a time intense. You have to know your stuff. And again, it goes back to the reputation. There's people that have burned other people. Yeah, I can mod your system. They take your money and run. So the nice thing about this area is that there are people that modify systems. Some systems are easier to modify than others. Atari 2600. I do recommend the Longhorn engineered S-Video mod. I have it on 2 systems. I recommend Atari Age for that forum. There's several reputable people there. I've had my ColecoVision modded. Fantastic. I guess there's even a component mod for it. It's like, oh my gosh. But I gotta say, it's fantastic.
HG Mousetrap, that'd be great.
Yeah, there's even people, Yerky, the forum username Yerky on Atari Age. He'll take an Atari 7800 controller and modify the top of it into an arcade ball. And he'll even do trades. I mean, how awesome is that? He's like, send me 3 normal controllers and I'll give you back one with like an arcade ball on it. And he does it for ColecoVision too. Other systems are a little more difficult, like JVC-XI. There's stuff that I don't recommend modding. Nintendo is kind of a weird one because like the original toaster style Nintendo has a fantastic signal.
Yes.
Standard AV out. I got my top loader modded and I paid too much for it. Looks like crap compared to my original one. You got the corduroy effect. It's a little bit less, but that's a good example. Some mods are better than others. And did I answer your question? Oh, anybody want to add that? Sorry.
I don't like the top loader NES. I'll just say that.
I would try to find someone local because you save a bunch of money on shipping. If you're in a major town, there's probably someone in your area that can do it. Just because a huge amount of the cost is just you're just going to eat in shipping the systems. But there's a lot of stuff like TurboGrafx where it's like get an AV mod. Why not?
I am doing a Pong festival in a couple months, a Pong Fest, celebrating the 40 years of video gaming. And I am looking for someone to modify my Pong unit. And I heard you can be done. I heard it can be done, but I am looking for somebody. But anyways, I'm all for it. I do it when I can. It is kind of expensive. I've done it over time. One of the vendors out there, EVG 2000 Charles, there's a modified Odyssey, Magnavox Odyssey 2 in the free play area. And he did those. Cheap too. Like I said, some systems are easier than others. Yeah. Next question. What do we got?
Leading into that, when you mod, are you just going to S-Video or are you going to something newer than that? What do you recommend as far as modding?
Well, AV's nice because all the TVs now have AV. Some of them don't even have the old RCA. So AV's like at least mod to that. S-Video is kind of tough because some TVs don't have it anymore. And so, but all my classic consoles are on older TVs because there's no lag. And so it's a nice clean picture. And so that's what I recommend, at least composite, I guess. I'm not technical, so please forgive me if I'm butchering the lingo, but like I said.
Yeah, RCA, composite.
Cool. Back there.
Does your collection ever force you to start collecting things that you're not particularly interested in just to be able to preserve your games? Like television, CRT TVs, coin slots, things like that.
I'm a shelf collector now, so.
I'm so a good example. I had it. I purposely took 2 days after the show so I could rearrange my game room in a major move, and so I did all my custom shelving in my game room, space, shelves, paper boxes. I try to stick with what I like, and if I don't like it, then I don't collect it. And I've been collecting games for 20 years, and so it's stuck. But yeah, the whole extra TVs, I like collecting TVs though, because I like collecting them because if I don't, then I don't get to play my games. So I enjoy it. Plus I'm blessed to live in the Northwest, which there's a ginormous amount of abundance of CRT TV still, which I can go to Goodwill or thrift stores and still find them reasonably priced.
Get an 80s TV just to have one, just play it how they played it back then. That's what I say.
Yeah.
You know, when people have like their big screen TV and they're hooking up an NES to it, that's not the same experience. It looks way different. There could be input lag.
Yeah.
You can't use your zapper on an LCD TV, so you got to have even a little like 15-inch TV. Go to the local swap meet or flea market, like $5. People are giving away nowadays, and they're not too hard to keep one of those around.
Yeah, nice 13-inch. I don't ever do the 19-inch anymore because I hurt a couple discs in my back, and so I like the smaller TVs because the picture looks better on the classic systems, and it's easier to carry. You know, and like I said, you can still get some really nice TVs. Now's the time to pick up those. You know, yeah.
CRT TVs and saying, I wonder what the picture would look like that for this particular game. I wonder what the sound is like on that.
My advice is new, but not too new, because some of the really old systems can't take those like the flat fronts. But I use those ones for like, you know, my PS2 and like my Dreamcast and stuff. Yeah.
And you can also, I haven't tried it, but I know it, like even if you have like a TV that like an old like 13-inch doesn't have the AV, you can hook a VCR to it, and
Yep.
through the VCR you can do AV.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that would ever come in handy, but I know you can do it.
Yeah.
So
There's ways around headaches, you know, and like I said, I like to, you know, I like the whole aspect of getting a new TV. My wife, by the way, hates when I come home with a TV. She like points to the garage, like it's like, you know, sending a dog to his like house. You know, it's like, you know, get that in there. But no, she's awesome. But yeah, definitely, it's you know, it's the balance of right. You know, I'm only going to get a TV if I need it and I have space for it and I can enjoy it. And you know, if I don't need another TV, then I'll let someone else get it. But sometimes, you know, with the Cowlitz Gaming Club, I have to store extra TVs, and luckily I have a local business that can store 9 TVs, and then for my upcoming Pong Fest, I'm going to need 25 CRTs, and luckily I have access to that already. So, yeah, good question.
Commodore 64 monitor is a great option if you can find one.
Oh, yeah.
They just look awesome, and you can hook up classic consoles to it. So if you can find one, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Atari Age has them out there, and their games look fantastic on them because there's just like that classic monitor.
there's also I managed to keep one. We had an XT, and we had like this Magnavox like 13 or 14-inch monitor, and you could do AV input into it. And this is like a monitor from like 84, 85, and the NES looks great on that. Looks fantastic.
Yeah, the TV monitor combo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, next question. Any questions?
Right side.
Want your guys' opinion on disc buffing and whether or not you should disclose it when you're selling stuff that's really nice and expensive. I have access to a machine that does an amazing, beautiful job, no swirl marks. But should I tell people if I did Suikoden 2 and that? You
Yes.
know, it looks beautiful.
Yes.
Okay.
That's being honest. That's being honest. If you're going to be complete, the more you can disclose about something, you may get less, but you're gonna get a reputation of being honest, and you're gonna get more sales from that. So my whole thing is, I know there's collectors that won't touch anything if they know it's been buffed. So I you know, especially PlayStation collectors, you know, condition means everything, but you know, buffed and not buffed, whether it's mint or not, you can still tell, and
It's
there's
like,
still ways to tell.
Like a comic versus a beat up comic versus a restored comic. A lot of people have a beat up one.
Yeah.
Sounds like okay, interesting. I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
I definitely would disclose that. I would be mad if I didn't know. And you know, if someone says it's a mint copy, it's not mint if you rebuffed it, you know, because it really, you know, it's restored. And I know a lot of sellers that would say it's mint, but if you rebuffed it, no, you're not being honest.
What about? I'm surprised no one's addressed with the whole VGA thing about people that are restoring game boxes, or because I've done it for my personal stuff. I've re-glued things like little flaps. I've re-glued them, and if you resell that stuff on eBay, you have to disclose that. You probably should, but I don't know if people are doing that.
Yeah, it's a good practice. You know, I used to sell some of my side stuff on eBay, and I got less money, but I was always honest. Someone ever asked for extra pictures, I'd give it to them. I'd always give a scale of condition out of 10. I would never say my stuff is mint. Mint, by definition, is untouched by human hands. If you touched it, it's technically not mint, in my opinion. And I always, typically, if it was in good condition, I would say it's 8.5 out of 10. So no one can say, oh, it's got a flaw or something. Well, it's 8.5 out of 10. I give it that 1.5 leadway, you know?
I got a collecting tip all around the whole box thing because what works well with boxes, like the flaps are a little glue sticks. If like you ever have like a flap, say from an NES Deluxe box where like the corrugation is peeled off from the top, if you use like a glue stick and put that down, it'll stay attached. It's not bad.
The flap on the side of a TurboGrafx case.
The flap on the side.
Paper comes up, the label on the side. You glue that down.
I hate the TurboGrafx box, how complicated it is, but I'd have to see it because I can't even picture it.
Yeah, like I said, that's a good question. I can just attest to that. I'm in a debate right now. I'm going for a PlayStation long box collection. I'm like 4-way, and some of the games the paper tops came in glued. So the question is, do I take glue and glue them down, or keep them, unglued? Because it does look kind of terrible, and it's like the debate. Like, do I make it look prettier, or do I keep it original? So it's like,
Is that a tough set to get? The long box set?
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah.
I saw someone out here had a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Did you buy them all?
No, I'm only missing 4 out of 100 and something, and it's getting harder. And I'm not going for like ultra mint, so it's like if it's beat up a little bit. I bought one long box here at the show for a map. It's a Romance 4, but it had the map in it, so it was $10. So yeah. Coming down, we got about 10 minutes left. So yes.
What do you think emulation has done for collecting? Has it hurt collecting or?
No, it hasn't. We talked about this at the Retroware TV panel yesterday, how you have software preservation, hardware preservation. And this came up with the disc because disc-based media is awful for preservation. And so like these PlayStation games might not be playing in 15, 20 years. It's a possibility. And so at that point, it's a good thing that they are backed up somewhere. It's a good thing that every NES ROM will be backed up if a nuclear holocaust happened. And when it comes to like the emulation, I feel that it's the same thing to me with pirated movies, where I don't think if you're going to see a movie and want to see it, you're not going to settle for just watching it on your computer playing. You want the real experience. So if anything, it opens it up to a lot of people. That's what got me back into it partially, was the internet. And I didn't realize when I went to college, I'm like, wow, you can play Nintendo games on your computer. I was like, I haven't played a Nintendo game in like 10 years. So let's see what's going on. And going to websites, seeing information. And so I think it only opens it up to more collect. I really do. I don't think it's really hard to say it hurts.
Yeah, I welcome it because it just gets more people interested in the industry. Because a good example, I'll just share this quick story. I teaching at the college, I put a smile on my face. This kid had set up his laptop with some type of like adapter for an N64, and was offering anybody to play him Smash Brothers on the N64 on his laptop. And I walked by, and I backed up. I go, that's cool. Because honestly, the truth of the matter is, a lot of people don't have the availability to a classic console or a game. That's the only way they can play is emulation. I welcome it because if anything, it gets them interested in finding more about something, and then they can seek out the stuff. But I welcome it. I think it's great.
Yeah, difference between emulation and piracy. Piracy is bad. The people who have, Wii's loaded up with tons of modern games, that is doing significant harm. But that's the difference between that and, say, emulation, because there is a preservation aspect, and I think people that are interested in the games actually are going to buy them anyways. But you do have to think about things like CD rot. If you're going to buy a really expensive Sega CD game or something, hold it up to the light. The film is actually wearing away. A lot of the original Laserdisc games for, say, like the Dragon's Lair arcade, the glue is rotted away. We were talking about Grindstormer for the Genesis as a shooter. If your copy isn't dead, you're really lucky because there's like an organic part in the chip that has rotted. So most copies of Grindstormer are dead, and if they're not dead now, they will be soon. There's also things like bit rot. Some early 2600 games are going through where there's organic materials in the board and they're can rot away. So you need to think about that. Like the glue on a lot of those CDs, a lot of people have CD collections from the early 90s where they go back and they realize that a third of their CDs don't work anymore. I know a lot of my tapes don't work anymore. So phosphorus is worn away. I mean, you need to think about things like that. So emulation will at least give that a future. But there's a difference between that and like modern day piracy. As long as you're not pirating and emulating modern games that people are making now, you're not really doing any significant harm. But I think the people that are really interested, if you want to play, say like a $200 game on an emulator or something before you buy it, more power to you.
Yep.
And then if you want to get really technical, I think the current explosion of retro game collection started with emulation, if you can call it emulation, with the Nintendo Wii. I always mark 2006 as the point where it went from to wow with the retro game collecting scene. And it's because people could download the titles on their Wii. The game's like, wow, I haven't seen Super Mario Bros. 3 in 15, 20 years. And then I think that did spur on a lot of people, especially like younger kids that you see are like 10 years old. There's like a 10-year-old here that has 500 NES games. How did he get started in it? It's like, how these 15, 14-year-olds, why are they interested in games from like the 80s? And I think a lot of it's because thanks to Nintendo with the Wii. I think that's part of it, and that's emulation, even though you're paying for it.
Got about 8 minutes? Yes, sir.
What about reproductions? Obviously not counterfeits, but how do you feel about collecting them and creating games like that and making games that weren't available now?
I think it depends on the title. Something like, I only own one, Mr. Gimmick, because it didn't come out in the U.S. The prototype was finished, never released. They're not going to release it, for Nintendo. I think it may have come out in a collection CD. That's really it. But for the NES, that's the one I have. When it comes to like prototypes, people buy the prototypes to sell them. I'll get in trouble for saying this. That's to me weird to do because that's not legal. Just because a game is a prototype, is never released, you don't legally have the right to make multiple copies of it and release it. So that's like, but it's not really. I mean, no one cares, but that to me is more of a gray area.
I think, like I said, I have a good friend that makes reproductions, and he only does like fan translations and stuff that wasn't available in the U.S. And I think it is a gray area. People have opinions all over the place, and I have some of them. I'm kind of picky on it. Like typically, if it's like something really weird, I'll get it. Like this last year, there was like a limited run of like Color Dreams unreleased game, and the guy went all out with like a manual and box and numbered it, and I think that was cool. So I supported that. I'm kind of picky on it, but yeah, I think there's nothing, personally nothing wrong with it. I think as long as they're upfront saying their reproductions and upfront with what they're selling, I think so. Game on.
90-80% of the reproductions you're going to find are going to be, physical copies of things like Japanese translations, hacks, unreleased games, things like that. I don't really see a problem with any of that. Making a copy of Earthbound for yourself just because you think it's expensive or possibly selling those, that's when you kind of go into immoral territory. But I mean, I have almost never seen that. A lot of the reproductions is like, hey, I'd love to play Secret of Mana 2, and there's a Japanese translation to English. That's great. If you want to make a copy of that or buy one, that's awesome. But just making a copy of Earthbound, that's definitely, you're getting into some pretty scary territory.
Yeah. Not the smartest thing.
Do you want to buy the rights to save events so we can make repros of it?
Yeah, that's another thing.
I guess Nintendo technically owns the rights since they bought it from Bandai.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
All right, I'll get in touch with them.
Yeah. Nice. Sign me up. All right. Got time for maybe one more question? 5 minutes. So another question? Good questions. Yes.
Can you talk about some meaningful ads you've had since you were kids?
Oh, yeah. Man.
I still have my original Nintendo Fun Club card. I somehow kept that. I sold all my Nintendo. I only had about 18 to 20 games as a kid. I would borrow them a lot and go to friends' houses and play them and rent them a lot. That's how I probably played over 100 as a kid, at least, easily 200, but I didn't own any of them. So I sold a lot of those, but I always kept like personal things like Nintendo Fun Club card. I had my Nintendo Fun Club issue. I kept all my Nintendo Powers until my dad threw out most of them. That's another issue. And then the other thing I kept, which I found a few years ago, somehow survived, even though I sold the game, and I still have it on my shelf with my copy, is I have my Legend of Zelda map that came with the game written up with all my notes.
Nice.
In pen, and I can draw little guys really well in there, moblins and everything, because like the map didn't have all the squares, so you can like fill it in yourself. There'd be like a question mark, what's there, and I'd put like, oh, it's a bomb case or whatever. And so I kept that. So that stuff means a lot to me, because it's like I can connect to how I was playing it originally, 25 years ago.
So my great story is I sold off my original Genesis set when I was in college because I was very poor. I was working part-time, going to school. I was pulling at one time 3 jobs, and literally was just like, paying for school as I go, and it was tough. The good news is that all the rental stores in my hometown of Cottonwood, California, I call it my hometown. I was born in Lodi, but I lived in Cottonwood for 18 years. I was able to go back and purchase those. So they were the same games that I rented, and I kept the stickers on them, Bowman Video, and Sega Master System of all things. I remember the first time I went in there and I rented them, because I could tell that the owners of the store were kind of disappointed, because they had, they'd bought the same amount of Master System games with Nintendo. And you could see all the Nintendo boxes all like completely rented, and they were being rented. All the Master System stuff was pretty pristine because nobody was renting it. And so I went back and was able to purchase all the remaining stock, and I have several of those in my collection. So they're the same games I rented.
My original Super Nintendo still has a Taz sticker on it that I got at a ski area. That's still the one that I play on. For me, Turtles in Time was the game that started me like collecting seriously. I had games before, but I remember my dad coming home when I was young, and eBay was still a completely new thing. Most people did not have internet in their homes at this time. He was just telling me about how amazing this business was that could provide you with basically anything you wanted, because before that was just not really as possible. So he said, I just heard about eBay, son. If there's anything you want, let me know. And I was like, I love Turtles in Time at Chuck E. Cheese. I've always looked for this Super Nintendo game. Please get this for me. $5 later, it shows up in my house, and I was 14 years old, and after I got that game and fell in love with it again, I was like, I want every Super Nintendo game ever, because this is just so much fun. And I got that particular cart signed by a bunch of YouTubers, because I'm a big YouTube fanatic. So, I got the Game Chasers to sign it, the Retro Hunters, Pat, I think you maybe signed it at PAX, Pitor, AVGN, and like that's cool, and I think that's awesome because it started for me, and like YouTube has allowed me to really enjoy my collection a lot more. So I thought that was really cool. A lot of people were like, "Oh, you want to get these games signed?" It's like, well, I'm going to keep it, and I think that's awesome. And this is kind of a monumental cart for me because that's really what started the whole collection. So, yeah.
Maybe then, while I'm on that, I got back into collecting largely because of a website called TSR's NES Archive. Anyone ever hear that? It's still alive on the internet, but the guy has an updated price. It's like $99. And he had a page discussing the Wisdom Tree Bible games. I had no idea about any of this stuff, or Wally Bear and the No Gang, stuff like that. So I would go around the Funko Lands looking for a Bible game. They never had it. And then one day, finally, I saw this nice, light blue cart, and it was Bible Adventures. And I was like, wow, Bible Adventures. It's a game I read about online. This is a strange game that I would never be at a Toys R Us. I would never heard of this. You know what I mean? Because you don't fathom it now, finding out of stuff existing that you had no idea about. It was like, oh my God, what's this controller? But that was I knew only 5% of NES stuff, at one point. So I like Bible Adventures, and I probably still have the original card I bought at a Funko Land back in '98.
That's pretty interesting. I have a long time ago when I didn't live in Washington. I went to Jesus Northwest in Vancouver. It's a big with church and stuff when I was involved with church, and I actually found in a local video store the actual cart that was at an event that I was at, previously 10 years. And it was a display, they had helped with this setup, I guess, or something, or bought previous Wisdom Tree stuff. So it's fun carts like that where I may have not owned them as a person and back in the day, but I was either renting games from a game store or at an event, and I was able to rebuy some games that were connected to my past. It's always fun. It's always fun when that happens. All right. Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's been a great
Yeah,
crowd.
thanks for coming
and,
out.
Good questions.
Thank you.
Sorry I was late.
I'd like to thank Pat and both Chris for joining me on this. Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your show.